Joe Paul is back in the House with Black Men Vote. Our usual Steve Laffey is with us. And Taylor Hathorn, new to the show, is a visiting fellow at the Independent Women's Center for American Safety and Security. Joe Paul, the auto pen, is it a scandal? I just find it fascinating that the former president decided after all these years to talk to the New York Times on yesterday for 10 minutes. I don't know if he did himself any good, but they're thinking about launching an investigation. And investigate, what are they investigating?
I don't even know what they're investigating, because we shouldn't be talking about an auto pen for a past administration. We should be talking about real issues, what's happening right now. Immigration reform.
We get that.
Well,
but just tell me whether it's a scandal or not.
So I don't think it's a scandal. I think it's a distraction. That's all it is.
But is it a problem that the chief of staff authorized and they signed all these pardons, which Trump is challenging, and Biden had no idea who he was pardoning of the thousands? Does that concern you?
It concerns me, but I don't know how much of that is true.
Tell me why it concerns you.
It concerns me because, the president should co-sign whatever he's signing. It should be the actual president's signature. So if someone else is signing on behalf of the president, that's problematic. However, I don't believe that that's what's happening here. I think all of it's conjecture, and again, it's a distraction from what's really happening.
Are you basing it on your feelings or basing it on the law?
It's a combination of both.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure. Steve Laffey, is the tariff the new tool of American power?
It is for Donald Trump, but unfortunately it's causing massive uncertainty, and he's handled it in the wrong way. He started with allies, which he doesn't seem to have any difference between allies and enemies, and he started with things that ultimately will come back to hurt him, because it will hurt the economy in the short run, while he will get some of the things he wants in the long term. His big mistake is the changing of tariffs all the time. If he had any real plan at the beginning about this, he would have started and finished by now and had real tariffs in plan, mostly with our enemies like Russia and China, and new free trade deals with people like the United Kingdom. But he didn't do that, and now he's forced to keep backing down and changing and putting new ones in. Ultimately, I think that tariffs will be higher in our country than ever before for maybe 100 years, and they will slow the economy for now, and in the long run, they will bring more things back to America.
Taylor, how is all this impacting America's foreign policy with Europe, with China, with our allies, with the Middle East? What are the things that are unforeseen here?
I think the Trump administration has been very clear about the America First mentality and position that they hold, and I think that this is all kind of favoring right into that hand. It is about America being in the #1 position in the driver's seat, and I think that they are doing a pretty good job on that front.
And what job is that?
I think just making sure that Americans feel like on a global scale we are in the driver's seat, and that American interests are being protected, that America's not going to be taken advantage of anymore by adversaries, that they are putting Russia and China on note that we're here and we're not going anywhere. And it is not the Biden administration. It's not the Obama administration. This is the Trump administration, and this is a new footing.
But Canada and Europe are not our adversaries.
I'm not worried about Canada, but I am worried about our allies in Europe, and I think that the recent summit at NATO showed just how good of a footing Trump is getting with the relationship with our NATO allies, and that those graces are getting back on the good footing. So I'm really happy with what happened at NATO.
Are you also wearing those rose-colored glasses, Mr. Laffey?
No, the relationships with other countries are not like that at all. They will smile and they will find other places to send their stuff. Canada will never, ever do what they did for America before, which has been our greatest ally, and that aluminum that we import 65% of to make cars, et cetera, is going to go elsewhere, folks.
I'm not incredibly worried about that. I think Canada needs us, and Canada knows that they need us, and Canada is an ally, but I'm not too concerned about what they're really upset about on tariffs, and they're back at the table. I mean, Trump has proven to be right about the tariff situation, and he showed that they're here to stay and they're working.
Trump is not correct about the tariff situation at all. He has no idea what he's doing, as he's changed his mind about 35 times, at least 10. In fact, holding up a piece of paper about being taken advantage of by Canada for over 20 years, multiple times, when he signed NAFTA 2 in 2020 means he has no real plan. And the thing about America is that we need allies that we can count on. And we had them in Great Britain, in Canada, in Europe, in Australia, and we are losing them, and we need to focus on our enemies. He's not raising hardly any money with this compared to the deficits that are being run, and now we have higher real interest rates, which will hurt Trump in the re-election in 2026 next year for congressmen and senators. All this is playing out very badly for America.
You know, Paul, Joe, the Supreme Court gave the Trump administration a 6-3 decision saying that he can continue his further dismantling of the Department of Education. Why and what are the ramifications now that he can continue as he's doing now at the State Department?
I don't think the Supreme Court got it right. I'll be honest with you. I think that.
But it was. How could they not get it right? 6-3 majority.
Well, it's a majority.
Yeah, obviously they got it right.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily have to agree with their opinion.
But you can't say they didn't get it right. They didn't have gotten it right for you.
I don't think they got it right. I
okay.
mean, we're
I'm
seeing,
not going to question the Supreme Court, but go ahead.
I will say, I will side with the three who I agree with. And so, here's where we are. The Supreme Court, unfortunately for some, is Donald Trump's Supreme Court. And so.
Wait a minute. They don't always vote with the president. In fact, we did an in-depth analysis for the Baltimore Sun.
Let's hear it.
And they voted more together almost 60% of the times, and only 38% of the times were they on different pages. And listen. Oftentimes, it's like 8-1. I was stunned myself when I actually looked at the details. You know what's interesting? And I want you to continue to say what you're going to say, is that the media only reports the high-profile cases. They don't really report all the cases that's before the court.
I think that's fair. I think that's very fair. However, we see a dismantling of government, right, happening right before our eyes. It's not just the Department of Education, it's all over. And we're letting go of career folks, just institutional knowledge that's lost. And now, guess what's happening with these folks? They're not just gonna stay unemployed. We have allies and some who don't really want us to do well that's picking up that talent. So we're getting brain drain right here in the United States because we're just taking a hacksaw or a a sledgehammer or whatever the case might be to the Department of Education and other departments. It should not happen. I mean, it should not happen. And if you look at where we stand education across the world, we're not first, and that's a problem. And it should never be America first and alliances last. Right? America first has to mean we should be first in everything.
It's interesting, Steve, because a lot of our kids cannot write anymore. They cannot communicate anymore. They cannot read anymore. They cannot do simple math anymore. Everything now is ChatGPT, AI does all the thinking for them. They cannot understand the big, beautiful bill because they don't have to read it. I mean, it just continues to dumb down America. And more than anything else, the thing that we don't talk about enough is really the crisis in America and in our education and how it's going to come back and bite us in the long run. And we're really seeing it in these high schools and these colleges as it unfolds before our very eyes.
Yes, and I think President Trump is doing a very good job on certain one of these issues. He has a good Secretary of Education. They haven't disbanded the department yet, but she's getting people to pay back their student loans, which of course Mr. Trump started the abeyance on that. 2, I went to Harvard Business School. I don't think Harvard should be an accredited institution. I think he's doing the right thing by going after these very elite schools and saying that you were anti-Semitic and you've got to pay the penalty. I think they should be taxed. They shouldn't be nonprofits, et cetera, et cetera. And I think in the bill, we're going to see more choice in school. Governors are going to have to make decisions. I've homeschooled 5 of the 6 children that Kelly and I helped raise. I have one with my first wife. And the proof's in the pudding. We need more school choice. We need people out of public schools. We need homeschooling. We need Christian schooling. We need anything but the public schools because it's not just the people we see who are 16 and 15 looking at their phones.
So let me make sure I'm clear on something. So your advocacy now is that education should go back to the states, that they do the best job, that they should dismantle the Department of Education.
Every decision that can be made locally be made locally. No decisions from the federal government on education. and let parents make all the decisions. Now, there will always be problems. There'll be some bad parents. But let me ask the question, everybody listening, could it be any worse than what's happened the last 35 years? No, it couldn't be any worse. It'll be better.
Taylor?
I grew up with two parents as educators. I grew up overseas going to international schools most of my life, and my parents were educators in Texas. And I'm not going to be one of these people that say that it's the problem of the teachers and that if there were better teachers or that it's one issue. It is a systematic issue, and these kids are the ones who are failing in the end, and they're suffering. I read a recent study that said in the Chicago school district, in the major city of Chicago, there was not a single child that graduated reading on grade level. That is terrifying for the future of our nation. And I think that the Trump administration is doing the right thing by taking a hard look at this.
What do you think from your experiences growing up, going into international schools, what needs to change in the education system?
I think parents have to really get involved again. It's not a teacher's job to raise our children and to teach them what they need to be learning, specifically about a curriculum, yes, but about day-to-day things in life. That's not just a teacher's responsibility. And so I think parents need to get involved. I think they need to have the support of their state. I think we need to stop making everything in these classrooms so woke. I think we need to focus on the good things that are going on in America and the ways that people can safely and healthily improve the system. America is not a perfect country. It is not a perfect place, but it is the best place on planet Earth to live. And we should be instilling those values in our kids so that they want to live here and grow here and make sure that they're building families here that have those same Western and American values that we do.
So, Joe, what about, I was surprised that Taylor did not mention the teachers union. What about the teachers union and the role they play?
I tell you, the biggest thing that needs to change is teachers need to be paid more and compensated for what they're doing and the impact that we're expecting. Now, I don't disagree that Department of Education needs some reworking. I don't disagree that all of the departments need some reworking. I think there's nothing wrong with coming in, breaking things up, and putting the pieces back together and trimming the fat. There's nothing wrong with that. However, there's going to be a lot of collateral damage as a result. There are kids who, when we're privatizing education, there are going to be kids who are just left out. If you can't afford to go to some of these schools, like the school choice, then where do you go? Where do you end up? And so the teachers union plays a major part in this. Now, they can lobby and have lobbied for increase in wages, et cetera, but it's not enough. And you see teachers are leaving this industry to go somewhere else where they're much more valued.
You know, I had an opportunity to attend a luncheon at the White House today. It's been a while since I've attended a White House luncheon, and it was a business and faith luncheon. People were very successful and attributed to their faith. And I was really struck by President Trump talking about God and faith and how we need something greater than ourselves to believe in. And I was saying to myself, is this President Trump? And then you know, Taylor and Steve and Joe, I said, he probably says these things, but the media never reports it. This is not what they show when they talk about the stuff that Trump says. And then we had an intermission, okay? President gave his speech, and then they had an intermission and set up lunch. And you wouldn't believe, in this room, with all these very successful businessmen, what the topic of the conversation was, which really shocked me. What is Trump going to do about his promise on Jeffrey Epstein? I couldn't believe it.
It's fair.
I mean, these are very sophisticated business people. There are serious issues going on in the world. And so I finally asked someone, what is it about Epstein? Because Trump and those built it up so much, Pam Bondi and the Justice Department built up, there was something explosive, and then all of a sudden there's a fizzle, and people believe they're hiding something. They're not being transparent. He's not honoring his campaign promise. And I thought that, as Trump said last week, in a very vociferous way, that there are more important things that we should be focused on than Jeffrey Epstein. But they believe that there's a deep state, there's a lot of corruption, and now they're trying to give Jeffrey Epstein a pass. And then when I went back and looked at the tape itself and the way it was cut and paste and so much was left out, I had my doubts about what the White House and the Justice Department is telling us. But we're going to talk about that when we come back. Jeffrey Epstein is still on the mind of so many people. And let me tell you, I've never seen MAHA and the GOP in such disagreement with Donald Trump? That's up next on Your Voice, Your Future. That's what they were. Well, the Department of Justice is telling us there's no Epstein client list being hidden, but MAGA influencers, oh yeah, from Laura Loomer, Tucker Carlson, oh, it doesn't stop. They're not buying it. Is this damaging the president's credibility with his base? Now, Taylor, I'm gonna start with you because Trump is publicly defending Pam Bondi, but the optics look pretty bad. Why does it look so bad, and why is the base so up in arms over this?
President Trump has always been really big on loyalty, and I think that his loyalty to Pam Bondi is showing through in his public comments about this. But the reason that there is so much division upon this topic is I think the administration and Pam Bondi herself made a really big PR faux pas in the beginning of all of this. I could sit here and speculate until the cows come home about whether there is a list, whether Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent. There are a million different directions that you could take this. But the reality is that Pam Bondi came in and said, we've got all of this information. She insinuated, didn't say.
Which means she read it.
Yes.
She read it. No question.
She insinuated, but didn't specifically say that there was a client list sitting on her desk. She said there were files sitting on her desk, but definitely made the insinuation. And then
she said it was explosive.
Yes, she said it was explosive.
Yes,
she gave a bunch of right-wing influencers a binder to carry out and kind of wave in front of the media and show that they've got all of this information, and it was a nothing burger. And I think that the best thing, I've worked in PR for a long time.
But you don't believe it's a nothing burger.
I believe that there is more information than what we are being given. Do I think it is as nefarious? I don't know. I'm not going to speculate. You have evidence and information you want to give me to show me that it is, then I'll buy into it.
But they said it was nefarious. They said it was.
Yes, and I think anytime you have things going on with young kids, that's going to be nefarious.
Yeah.
But how nefarious it is and whether Mossad is involved and whether it's this big CIA cover-up, I think that there's so many different directions that it could go. But the reality of what has happened is, and the reason that there seemed to be this riff at the end of the week with the FBI and with DOJ HQ is that it was a big nothing burger, and the messaging was so bad. You know, the Trump base, the MAGA base, was really, really, really counting on them to come out and talk about the reality of this situation, the big them versus us, and then the deep state. And then you've got people who are just like, well, that didn't happen. There's nothing to see. Here's this fake video. You're too stupid to understand, you know, what this is. And I think that's why so many people on the right and the left right now are saying, hold up. If the truth is the truth, then okay, then there was nothing, but why did you oversell it? Why did you say that there was? And I think that there's a lot of validity there in order for people to be mad over. I also think that it's really important to note that I want to say that I think it's a very healthy discourse that's happening among the right now. I think that actually shows the amount of political diversity that takes place in the right, is that we have people who are just like from the farthest extremes of both sides of the aisle on this issue, is that we can all be a part of the right, and some of us could be like, yeah, he's a member of a Mossad and he didn't kill himself, to, you know, there was just a PR crisis and this was handled really poorly. So I just want to make sure that political diversity that's happening on the right now, I don't see that happen too much on the left.
Joe?
Let me tell you something, folks. The richest man in the world tweeted, hey, folks, bomb number 3, whatever it was, he said, hey, the reason why Donald Trump doesn't want these Epstein files released is because he's on them. That's the reason. And so as everything continues to unfold, and Pam Bondi and this whole administration ran on a few promises. They would end the war on day one, and they would release MLK, JFK, and Epstein files. They went across America sharing that good news. And guess what? People bought it and people believed it. And fast forward, you're saying nothing to see here? Well, look, the deposition says something different, right? Donald Trump, although he wasn't named, is John Doe 174 in the Epstein trials, in the Epstein files, right? So that means that do your Googles, do your Chat GPTs, don't just trust Joe Paul. But what that means is that there's at least 173 more people who are on that list, right? That list that doesn't exist. So what's happening right now? Look, the DOJ needs to, the DOJ and the FBI needs to step up. The president needs to step up and release and open these files, because if they don't, it's going to be damaging. And you'll continue to see, and I disagree, you'll continue to see a Republican Party just tear apart from the inside, because it's a moral issue at this point. Tell the truth.
I want to address something
no,
really quick.
No, I gotta get
Okay.
my yes. So, Steve, what is fascinating about this conversation is that you don't hear an outcry from the Democrats demanding that these files are released. Because I do know the deep state, the establishment, the Democrats and Republicans can also sometimes come together on the one accord if they're both parties are going to be damaged, and especially stalwarts of the party. And this is an instance where Democrats have been silent, and you have to ask yourself why, because they could use this as an issue, but they're refusing to, which means Jeffrey Epstein favored not Republicans, the Democrats, but people who favored the flavor that he was offering. So that's what it boiled down to. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's much deeper than what people are talking about.
Yes.
I think that, and I want to correct the quote went like this. The man asked Pam Bondi February 21st, the Department of Justice will be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? And she says, quote, it's sitting on my desk right now. Unless we're going to have a Bill Clinton moment about the word is, now about it's. She's talking about the list, number one. Two, the people who run the FBI, the two top guys, they were all in. Three, Donald Trump is in charge of conspiracy theories for the last 30 years, whether it was where Barack Obama was born, what Ted Cruz's fathers did, the election of 2020, what Hillary Clinton possibly did. All those things are his dealing. So this reminds me in a nonviolent way of what started to happen to Robespierre in 1794. People got exhausted and his allies turned on him first. And this is what happened when we just mentioned Elon Musk. Now we're mentioning Tucker Carlson. We're mentioning Charlie Kirk, mentioning a bunch of young people who are turning. And then if you add in, Armstrong, the thing that happened today regarding Ukraine and the isolationists who are going to be very upset about the, quote, never-ending war that Trump is now starting, I think you have the beginning of the real cracks in what has become the Republican Party. Not my Republican Party, which is strong national defense, pro-life, and balanced budgets. It's become the conspiracy party, right? Along with a bunch of these other issues and isolationists, and Trump's made the mistake because this gets right at what he stood for to these people. And if they fall away, we'll lose 40 to 60 seats in Congress next year.
I want to come back to you on another topic before we.
Can I address what Joe said really quick about President Trump?
No.
Okay, I want to do that in a minute.
You're not here to defend. You're here to defend the truth.
But I think it's important. It's an important point.
I have a more important point,
okay,
Joe.
I believe you.
Why is John Brennan and James Comey about to face criminal charges? And is this about retribution? It does not deny the fact that they lied and misled the public on the Steele dossier. There's no question. And this is directly for the deep state, okay? What is it that they believe? We know the charges against Brennan, yet to be named against Comey, but they do believe there was some kind of ties, some kind of conspiracy between those two to make sure that Trump never run for office again and make sure that he ended up in jail.
DNI Tulsi Gabbard addressed a student conference this weekend where she really talked about the concept of the deep state and how far and hard they are working against it, but that the deep state is working harder. And I don't think that it makes me conspiratorial to think that there are a group of people who belong to this faction. And I think that Tulsi is one of the most ethical and honest people I've ever met in my life. And if she says that they're working to uncover some of these things that are going on, then I trust her and I believe her. As far as why the president and the Department of Justice is bringing these charges, I don't know. If it were me, from a PR standpoint, I would be probably in favor of doing something like this to set notice to people who tried to drag my name through the mud for years, who definitely tried to and maybe successfully influenced an election, and say, we're not going to do this in this administration. We're not going to tolerate this. If you're going to do it to me, I'm going to do it to you. And if that was me putting on my PR hat, that's what I would be saying, but I can't speculate why the president and the administration is doing what they're doing.
Steve, your thoughts on the criminal charges that are being brought?
Well, I agree. I think that it was such an important thing in the lies about the Steele dossier that if we can get to the bottom of this, those people should be charged if they're guilty, if they found, and they should be brought into court, because what they did was undermine everything we stood for with nothing but falsehoods about President Trump. I stood with President Trump on this issue from the very beginning. It was one falsehood after another between what happened in Russia. It didn't happen at all in Russia. And I don't know what they're going to find, but if it is true, they need to be prosecuted and put in jail.
I disagree.
Go ahead.
So here's what you're looking at, right? There's a statute of limitation that's running out on whether they can try Comey or Brennan. So the problem is, what everybody needs to pay attention to is you have a Republican and a Democrat who have spoken out against this administration and this administration's policies. So it looks retaliatory, right? And so, to our honor,
but it doesn't change the facts that they conspired to create. No, not potentially.
Allegedly.
It's just a fact. Not allegedly. They did.
No
The facts are there from the Washington Post to the New York Times. Everybody's investigating. No.
Who proved it? Has it been proven in a court of law?
Well, Hillary.
You just said that Trump could have been prospectively involved in the Epstein list, and there's been no proof of that. And so I think
Do your Googles. Don't trust Joe Paul. Do your Googles.
I think if the Biden administration had had any information and evidence that Trump was involved in the Epstein list, I think we would have heard about it.
No.
But that has been addressed. That issue has been addressed.
It has. But here's the thing. They're Democrats and Republicans. They're rich people. There's a lot of folks on that list. So that's why the Democrats probably don't want it. And that's why the Republicans don't want it. Because there are a lot of influential people who are on that list. And they're trying to CYA. That's what's happening.
And what people though should be really upset about is that over 1,000 young ladies were abused and raped, and they need justice. And that's why the young MAGA people are turning against Trump, and that's why they should turn against him. We need that information out there. That can never happen again. Forget the people who were involved tangentially or took plane rides. We need to know who did this, and we need to put them in jail. And
but in the same way with Comey and Brennan, you've got to be able to say that, like, when the law is broken, the law is broken. And it doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. The law is the same for everyone. The left loves to say that. So let the law happen. Let justice take place.
Yes.
You have them.
So look, here's what's happening. Again, we don't fight in the court of public opinion, right? There's actual laws in place for the time being. And so we need to follow those, right? And so if we are leveraging the Department of Justice, who have already shown they have a history now of going after people who've spoken against the president and his policies. So that's problematic. And they're repeating what they accused the Biden administration of doing.
So I got to tell you, though, these charges and allegations against Brennan and that letter that they signed, staking the credibility of the intelligence community when they knew that Biden's Secretary of State was putting this together to make sure they protect and give Biden his best chance at winning the White House. I mean, I understand if I were Trump, I'd be mad too.
Well, yeah.
If somebody went to that extent to try to destroy me and my family.
I don't disagree.
I mean,
with that.
come on. I mean, he's human.
I don't disagree.
I mean, I get that. At some point, where does it stop? Until justice is done.
He's a human who wrote an entire book on how to not lose, and you're surprised that he's not wanting to lose.
But he's always lost, though. There's like,
he's been president twice. He's been president twice, though. It all depends on how you define losing. For the American people, if you can be indicted as many times as he's mentioned today, if you can go through from the depths of the American justice systems and the humiliation, and you can win again, and people still believe in you, I got to tell you something. That's a victory that and a legacy. You say whatever you want to say. Listen, I'm not here defending Trump,
but it doesn't mean what he did wasn't real.
I guess losing is in the hands of the person that's talking.
He lost 34 convictions.
That's okay. He's president today.
But he won the popular vote.
He's president. Let me thank Joe Paul. Let me thank Taylor Hathorn. Let me thank Thanks, Steve Laffey. And we'll be back with much more on Your Voice, Your Future. Thank you. We'll be back.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence, there's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com.
You know, the big, beautiful bill isn't just another piece of legislation. It carries sweeping implications for both our health care system and national security. From Medicare modernization to the expansion of drone technology and military logistics, this bill could reshape key sectors of American life. To help us break it all down, we're joined by William Soliman and Micah Healander, two experts at the intersection of innovation and policy, and we welcome you both to the broadcast. Let me start with you, Bill. How does the big, beautiful bill actually impact Medicare recipients, particularly around access, affordability, or this pharmaceutical innovation?
Thanks for having me. So here's the thing with Medicare. Remember, you got about probably 70 to 80 million people in the U.S. on Medicare. And this bill doesn't actually expand any Medicare drug price negotiations. And the reason why I bring that up is because for a lot of people out there, they might remember during the Biden administration, there was the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, where they were trying to put a cap on certain drugs within Medicare for certain particular products. So in this bill, I think what's important to understand is when it comes to Medicare and the drugs under Medicare, there's actually no Medicare drug price negotiation provisions that were set forth. What it does do is it impacts Medicaid. So it kind of, the way I would think about it is that it doesn't really cut Medicaid, but it revises Medicaid. Because remember, Medicaid is a charitable entitlement, right? It's not something we pay into like Medicare or Social Security. So the state picks up that expense, right, if you're poor under a certain income bracket. And basically what President Trump has done, which I think is a good thing, is say, look, if you're an able-bodied adult and you can look for work and you're able to work, then you should be off Medicaid. And you have to report certain things. Because a lot of people don't realize is that 40 states out of the 50 states in the United States today don't have any Medicaid regulations. And so by being able to cut Medicaid, or revise Medicaid rather, to people who really need it, that's going to give a lot of savings to the government over the next decade, probably about over $1.5 trillion they're estimating over the next 10 years. So Medicaid is where you'll see some of the changes, not necessarily Medicare.
So are we seeing a true shift toward preventive care and Medicare? Are these policies mostly cosmetic?
You know, I think we are. If you think about, the appointment of RFK Jr. to the HHS and what he's trying to do when it comes to food and nutrition and a focus on what's happening even with vaccines and things like that, I think we are seeing a shift towards more preventative care. So the intention is there. I think it's really all a matter of how it's executed. But the intention is definitely there, and I think, this administration, at least from my perspective, is moving in the right direction for sure. One of the things that I think is a challenge is the fact that although in the bill, and this is to President Trump's credit, he put provisions to regulate what he called were the middlemen, the pharmacy benefit managers. He talked about that in his first administration, really when no one knew about it. These are the people that really impact drug pricing, from my perspective, coming from pharma. But that was removed from the final bill. So Congress removed it, and to me, that preserves what I see as a system that's not very transparent.
So, Michael, the bill includes expanded funding for drone and unmanned aircraft systems. How significant is this in terms of U.S. Homeland Security?
There's four major things that are pull this all together. The first one is there was two executive orders just over a month ago. The first one was unleashing American drone dominance. That is to help start building drones here in the United States, and then also allowing drones to do more advanced operations here in the U.S. The second one was restoring American airspace sovereignty, which is about securing our airspace here around critical infrastructure within our cities, nuclear plants, and so on. So those two executive orders came out a month ago. Then within this big beautiful bill, there's roughly about $13 billion that is going into the funding to support U.S. manufacturing of drones, the tools for public safety to be able to understand what's happening in the airspace, uncrewed aircraft detection systems. And then finally on Friday, there was a memo out that was signed by Pete Hegseth, which is similar, is unleashing U.S. military drone dominance, which is then removing a lot of the red tape to start to build drones at such a speed and being able to push it out to our military, almost like ammunition. That's how many drones they want to produce here in the United States. So it's a big, tall order for the United States to step up, but it's exciting for our industry.
Speaking of this, there's just been a lot of airplanes falling out of the sky, major crashes, emergency landing. Every time you turn around, what about a need to take a look at our airspace, take a look at our air controllers at this area, and have those safeguards to protect, particularly those travelers who fly the friendly skies?
Yeah, and that's part of this as well, is making sure that we don't have aircraft or drones flying into airports. As we saw last week with the floods in Texas, our hearts go out to them, but a drone did run into one of those helicopters, and they had to make an emergency landing, and now that aircraft was not able to be used in emergency for the rest of the week. So this systems and this funding is also to help support our manned aircraft systems as well.
Bill, I'm not here to have a Trump love fest today. What challenges do you see in the big, beautiful bill directly with the kind of technology and what we need to do moving forward in this space?
Well, and when it comes to the drug development in the pharmaceutical industry, this is a good thing because he's put a lot of provisions in the bill to help support innovation in clinical trials. So, going back to pharmaceuticals, if you're out there listening and you're a patient or a caretaker of someone that has a rare disease or ultra rare disease, this bill's a good thing. This is a good thing. If you're someone that has, advanced cancer or you're trying to get into clinical trials, this bill is a good thing because it actually enables pharmaceutical companies, because of some of the provisions, to invest more in research and development and clinical trials. And that's a positive. I think, unfortunately, when you look at what's happening sometimes in terms of how these stories get spun, especially on the left, the story is spun that there's a lot of cuts. This is going to cut science, this is going to cut research. But actually, this bill for the pharmaceutical industry is a positive, but that's a good thing because that enables them to reinvest back into research and drug development, and again, looking for new treatments for patients.
So, Michael, what role will civilian tech companies play in these military logistic upgrades? And does this blur the line between public and private defense?
It is taking commercial technology and starting to call it dual use and moving at the speed of some of these startups that are able to build drones quickly and with this technology, and then moving it faster into the Department of Defense or Department of Homeland Security or border protection, because we have drones, we're seeing them coming over into the U.S. and being able to move faster. So it is blurring that GovTech, but we need to move a bit faster as a country to catch up, because a lot of the technology that we're using today in our public safety and homeland security is 75% of it's made in Asia, which is an area that we need to start securing our technology and securing our airspace with U.S. technology.
So, Bill, how does the bill actually handle the cost of these advanced therapeutics, including AI-assisted treatment plans? And is there a risk of over-regulating health innovation, or does this bill strike the right balance between access and advancement?
It's a great question. When it comes to access, for some of the high-cost specialty drugs, there could be an impact there. And I think the reason is that what's going to happen is if you see some of these cuts on the Medicare or Medicaid side or some impact there on the federal side for pharmaceutical companies, it may make it harder for some payers to pay or cover those medications. So that is a possibility for sure. But here's the thing, and this is actually related to what Michael said. You know, we talk about the influence of Asia and China in particular. You know, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is a lot of your generic drugs, they come from China. They're manufactured in China. They're manufactured in India. From a safety perspective, that's a concern. Remember, a lot of facilities in China and India can't get inspected by the FDA. That's a big problem. There's been a lot of issues of contamination with generic drugs coming out of those facilities. So, you know, I like where this administration is headed when it comes to the tariffs, when it comes to incentivizing pharma manufacturers to produce domestically. So I think we need more of that. Similar to what Michael said in terms of what's happening overseas again in Asia, we want, from our perspective, you know, as patients, we want to make sure the quality of the drugs that we're taking are high quality, that's something that we could rely on and have more assurance on. And if they're manufactured in the U.S., that's going to fare better for everybody.
You know, Michael Healander is the CEO of Airspace Link. We thank him so much for joining us. And William Soliman is the CEO of the Accreditation Council for Medical Affairs. Thank you both. We look forward to having you back on in the future. Much more on Your Voice and Your Future when we return. I'm Armstrong Williams.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
You know, I think we all will agree that we live in a time when headlines and deadlines are filled with division and decay. Our next guest has offered a powerful and deeply human counter-narrative in a recent piece in the Kennedy Beacon. And in her piece, she talks about a nation full of hope. Caitlin Sinclair explores what it really means to make America healthy again, not just physically, but morally, spiritually, and emotionally, from small towns to overlooked communities. She chronicles a quiet revolution journey of faith, family, and local strength that just might hold the key to what is needed, a national renewal revival. And she joins us And she is a contributor to MAHA and Report from the Kennedy Beacon. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us about your journey.
What I can tell you, and thank you for helping me, is right now we are witnessing not only a rebellion, we're witnessing a spiritual revolution. My journey took me, it was one of the darkest odysseys that I've ever had to go through, and it took me across the country, not only to world-renowned institutions, but to college students, to other young women that are suffering from diseases that we don't even have a name for right now. So absolutely, I would say that optimism right now, that four-letter word, hope, is rebellion. It's considered rebellious to have faith right now, to be hopeful in this country. But I also think that it's the beginning of revival, and having such great leaders, disruptors, as our president calls them, like a RFK Jr. in office, fighting for the people, fighting for this spiritual revolution. That's what this is all about. Because right now, I believe things can get better. And it's one of the most radical things you can do right now is to believe in that, especially when we live in a culture that thrives on us being weak and afraid and fearful. And the good news is the American people see right through all of this right now. They are challenging the status quo. They are asking questions about their food supply, about their sick kids, about things that they've been told to just accept. They are saying no more and no longer. And I can tell you, when I was sick in a hospital bed for years on end, truly, and I'm sure some of your viewers can relate, I never thought that we would be having the conversations that we are now having on a national scale. So it means the world to patients and people like me, and I'm sure many of your listeners as well.
You know, your article reads like a love letter to everyday Americans, and you write about hope being louder than the noise. What gives you that hope in a time of such anger and confusion? And do you also believe that there were reoccurring values or phrases that you heard from Americans across very different communities during this tough travel of yours?
Yes, absolutely. My mom and I had a phase during that dark time. We said, dig deep. She would always say to me before going into a procedure or surgery, Caitlin, dig deep. And what that really meant was to find the strength within myself. And I think this country is going through that right now. My generation, the millennials, and the generation coming up behind me, Gen Zers, they want to get back to traditional values of strength in this country, getting back to basics, family, faith, freedom, wanting to be healthy, wanting to speak honestly, lovingly, not wanting to be enemies, not wanting to argue with our fellow peers. And even when that feels scary or uncool in today's culture, I would say dig deep. And that's the advice I would give. That's what got me through some of my darkest days. As far as my travels and what I learned is exactly what I just alluded to. This young generation, some of those headlines from the mainstream media, they're just not true. They depict the lazy, entitled young generation, and that's not what I witnessed.
Tell us about your medical journey. What you endured.
Well, we would need a much longer segment, my friend. But
give us the shorter version.
What I can tell you is I was a victim. Again, like probably a lot of your viewers, I was a victim of a broken medical system that did not treat me as a whole body or a whole person, that treated me as far as my symptoms, that put Band-Aids on my symptoms, that treated me with pills and medications and surgeries. And I had organs removed that I probably didn't need to. I had procedures, I was poked, I was stabbed, I was treated like a guinea pig. And again, I never thought in those dark times that we would be talking about these issues now, that we would have leaders and fighters that are speaking on behalf of those victims, of those patients like myself that so badly wanted our voices to be heard. And that's why I actually got into journalism, because I knew what it was like to be on the other end of that camera, of that microphone, and so badly want to be heard by our government, by big food.
How long was your medical journey before you found the power to find what was necessary to heal and regain your full self again?
Oh, it was a long odyssey, a really dark 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
I truly found my full power back, regained confidence spiritually, physically, mentally. I went to the world-renowned institutions that I was told growing up were the best. Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic. I saw doctors all over the country. And it was a lot mentally. The pills, the drugs, everything that I didn't believe I would ever be putting into my body as someone that lives very holistically and naturally. But it came full circle. It brought me to the MAHA movement, willing and able to speak and tell my story and hopefully make others feel like they're not alone. And that's
So what role do you believe young people can actually play in preserving and redefining the American spirit? And what do you say to critics who might label optimism as naive in the face of real national trauma?
Oh, well, to the critics that want to stay cynical, I would say get well soon. Because as I started this segment saying, optimism, of course, is rebellion these days, right? Everything that was traditional in this country, everything that we were grounded around, which is faith, freedom, that is called being a modern day rebel. But it's also the beginning of a revolution, of revival. And leaders like RFK Jr. are giving voice to that quiet movement. And I would say to all the young people, you can easily be part of that movement. You can now use the momentum that we have in this country and speak your mind. Don't be afraid of the critics. Don't be afraid to speak how you really feel. And that healing this country is not just about policy. It's not just what goes on between the doors in Washington, D.C. and in the White House.
You know, in a minute that I have left, are hospitals in the business to cure people or to make them depend?
No.
They're not.
Not right now.
They're not.
They are incentivized by the wrong things, and it's not these physicians' fault. I come from a family of doctors, and the training and how they're incentivized needs to change. The incentives need to change, the priorities need to change, the education needs to change.
Is that part of your revolution, your message going forward? Changing
Yes,
it?
of course, absolutely. It is part of the soul of this nation for the education to change and to make healthcare and the medical system actually heal the American people.
You know, I can actually, on the other side of this, feel the stress and what you had to do. I can see the pain, I can see the relief, and I thank you for finding your way that works for you. I appreciate your courage, and it doesn't mean that you're healed. There's still obstacles that you face, but you've learned better how to navigate them because you don't give others your power. You know, you keep it for yourself because people exploit that and abuse that.
Oh, yes.
And you've learned it.
Yes.
So thank you, and I look forward to having you back in the near future. And thank you for sharing such a powerful reminder of the American spirit and what we can do, and that you cannot empower others without empowering yourself. God bless you, and thank you for joining us. And thank all our guests for joining us tonight. I'm Armstrong Williams.